Jessica lives in an average family in a small town near Seattle. In her childhood, she was the favorite child, as it usually happens in full families. But this came to an end when her parents unexpectedly divorced and decided to live separately. Jessica desperately wanted to stay with her father because he, in her opinion, loved and understood her the most. Their relationship was an example for everyone. As a child, Jessica always waited for her father to come home from work and ran to the door as soon as she heard it open. She would rush into her father Henry's arms, and they could stand there in the hallway for about 10 minutes. The reason for Jessica's parents' divorce was not as prosaic as her relationship with her father. They decided to part ways because they stopped loving each other. That's what Jessica thought at first, but it didn't make it any easier for her. She blamed her mother, Olivia, for everything. They had very complicated relationships. Especially in Jessica's teenage years, they often argued and caused scandals for no reason. In principle, the same situation existed in her childhood, and as they grew older, their relationship only worsened. Then it turned out that her father had another woman before he divorced Jessica's mother, and she later became pregnant with Henry. And now he has another family, in which, apparently, he is completely happy. Jessica constantly sees photos that his young wife posts on social media. In fact, the girl even envies them a little. Especially her step-sister, because now all the attention goes to her. Jessica is doing well in school. But she believes that the knowledge she is getting in school is probably not going to be useful to her. The girl wants to devote her life entirely to dancing. She loves going to dance classes, standing behind the scenes, waiting for her performance, and floating on stage. Her choreographer praises her and promises Jessica a bright future, and she believes in it herself. In Jessica's life, there is another unpleasantness: her stepfather George. He is her real problem. He met Olivia a year after Henry left the family. Olivia loved George very much, even though he was about 5 years younger than her. In her opinion, everyone around them was bad, only George was always good. But in reality, things were not quite like that. This person only seemed cute and fluffy to those around him. Jessica could not understand how a man like George could have attracted her mother. He was young, without higher education, and, as it turned out recently, even unemployed. This was the first time Olivia did not believe her daughter. It all started on a regular morning when everyone had just woken up and was rushing about their business. "George, hurry up and get up. You're going to be late for work," Jessica's mother shouted throughout the house. George loved to sleep in, often making him late for work. Jessica had long since gotten up and was busy finishing her breakfast, sitting on her phone and checking social media. Today was a day off, but she had dance lessons, which Jessica could not afford to miss. By this time, George had finally woken up and went to wash up. To avoid crossing paths with her disliked stepfather, Jessica quickly finished her porridge, said goodbye to her mother, grabbed her bag, and hurried off to her dance lessons. She only had 30 minutes left, and she still needed to pick up her friend and walk to the building where their dance ensemble was located. On the way, she thought about how strange circumstances can be. George had never talked about his job. Jessica only knew that he was a manager at some local bank working with clients, and that was it. Jessica and her friend Amber were greatly delayed because Amber took a long time to get ready. On her way, Jessica was heavily scolding her friend for it, but suddenly stumbled. In the window of the inexpensive Café Elite, which the girl often visited with friends, she noticed her stepfather at a distant table holding hands with some unfamiliar girl. "This is so strange, he should be at work." Amber jerked her friend's hand, thus pulling her out of the abyss of dark thoughts. How upset Mom will be when she finds out that her beloved George is having fun with some painted hussy, Jessica thought. Later, she regretted not filming this couple on camera because something terrible happened next. On the same day, after dance class, Jessica made her way to the bank where her stepfather was supposed to work. "Excuse me, can you please tell me if George Brown is off today or not?" The young lady asked the girl at the entrance, picking a question carefully. "I'm sorry, but no man with that name works here." "Maybe you got the wrong bank?" the friendly worker asked with a smile. "I'm sure I didn't make a mistake," Jessica cleverly replied. Everything was going great. Jessica never liked her stepfather. He was a hypocritical person, often rude and insulted Jessica, which led to constant quarrels between them. But Valentina had never intervened in their arguments before. Jessica decided to tell her mother about George's deception. As soon as she got home, Jessica walked into the kitchen and stared triumphantly at George. "Mama, George doesn't work anywhere. I saw him today at Elite, holding hands with some beautiful brunette. They were whispering about something," Jessica quickly said. "Is this true, George?" Olivia asked with a bewildered look. "What are you talking about? I don't understand." "You know how much I work even without lunch, Olivia," said George, still looking at her with confusion and waiting for an explanation. "Don't lie," interrupted Jessica. "Mom, I went to the bank, and they told me that there's no one with that name working there." George gave an excuse. "Of course, I'm not officially employed, otherwise, I wouldn't be able to receive unemployment benefits." "Olivia, I told you that my uncle got me a job at the bank. That's why they couldn't tell you that I worked there, Jessica. And I didn't go to any cafe today. You must have been mistaken, or even made up some silly story to frame me in front of your mother. Olivia, I always told you that your daughter would never accept me. Should I leave?" Jessica was amazed at how much her stepfather could influence her mother. He manipulated her skillfully, as if pulling strings and ordering her to do only what he said. Jessica had hoped until the last moment that her mother would only believe her daughter. But it didn't happen. Apparently, she loved George too much. Olivia looked sadly at her daughter and said, "I'm tired of this, Jessica. How long do I have to put up with this? I know you don't like George, but you must accept that I also have the right to love. You communicate with your father, even though he traded us for another family. You're a real selfish person, daughter, and I want you to apologize to George." That day, Jessica had to shamefully accept her defeat and apologize to her stepfather. He stood with a victorious look, as if he had won the war. But it was only a battle. From that day on, Jessica hated that man with all her heart and wished she never had to see him again. George, in turn, became more brazen. Apparently, he felt that he could do anything in this house and nothing would happen to him. After all, Olivia believed him, but sometimes his behavior crossed all boundaries. Olivia worked as a paramedic, sometimes on night shifts. Today happened to be one of those days. Jessica was sitting in her room reading another novel. Reading was one of her passions. She loved immersing herself in an imaginary world where everything could be as she wanted it to be. All was well until the sound of the door opening interrupted her. Before this, Jessica wasn't afraid to be alone in the apartment with her stepfather, but now she felt uneasy as she sensed the unpleasant smell of alcohol. "What are you doing?" George began cautiously. The man was heavily drunk and barely standing on his feet. "Can't you see or are you blind?" Jessica answered indifferently. "What do you want? Why did you come?" George moved closer and sat on the bed. I need money very badly. I know your mother gives you some. Let me have a little to sober up for tomorrow, otherwise they'll stop selling, he pleaded. And you don't get paid at work anymore, do you? How sad. Get out of here, I won't give you any money, replied Jessica with hostility. Oh, you monster. So, I live with your old mother and still have to put up with your behavior? Shouldn't I beat you for educational purposes, daughter? Come on, come here. George was about to grab his stepdaughter's hand when she quickly dodged the man's irrational behavior. But George was also agile enough, and he quickly got up and swung at Jessica. She was very frightened and screamed, but still managed to avoid the blow. The stepfather hit his hand on the table. The man screamed in pain and sat on the floor to recover. Jessica quickly grabbed her phone, bag, and hurriedly put on her jacket before running out of the apartment. She called her friend Amber and asked to spend the night there. The girl was very scared. She decided to tell her mother everything as soon as she returned from her night shift. Jessica's friend greeted her warmly, but Amber's parents were not home. They often went on business trips, so the girls could sleep peacefully. In the morning, Jessica decided that she needed to go home quickly because Olivia was supposed to be back home at 6 in the morning. On the way home, Jessica received numerous calls from her mother. As it turned out, George had come up with a story for Olivia. He claimed that her daughter had unexpectedly left home without asking him. Jessica's mother was so scared that she called her daughter dozens of times. Jessica decided not to answer her calls for now. She wanted to tell her everything in person. She was already looking forward to the moment when Olivia would kick George out. As soon as Jessica entered the apartment, Olivia immediately bombarded her with questions. Jessica, how could you do this? Couldn't you call me or tell George that you wanted to stay overnight with your friend? What happened? Why did you leave? I'm asking you. Olivia demanded answers from her daughter. Mom, your favorite George almost beat me up. He came to my room drunk at night and started asking for money. I didn't give him any, and he tried to hit me, it's true. That's why I left to spend the night at Amber's. Jessica shouted to make her mother believe her. But George said he went to bed. Olivia looked at her beloved. Is this your doing again? When will you stop blaming him for everything that happens around you? You will tell me why you left home. Jessica was in shock as she answered her mother. Mom, why don't you believe me again? Maybe I should have let myself get hit just to prove his guilt to you. And can't you smell the alcohol on him from a mile away? I can smell it from here. George can afford to drink, so what's the big deal? He supports our family. I don't want to hear anything more. You are punished. You won't leave the house for anything other than school for the rest of this month, and you will never go to your dances again. Jessica was lost and didn't know what to do in this hopeless situation. Tears started welling up in her eyes. She slammed the door in front of her mother and stepfather with all her might and ran away from her home. She didn't know where to go next, but she knew for sure that she couldn't stay in her own home where no one believed her. Going to Amber's place wasn't an option either, as Jessica's friend's parents were supposed to come back today. If Jessica showed up there, Amber's parents would call Olivia and tell her about the whereabouts of her daughter. There was only one option left. Jessica took out her phone and started dialing a number. Dad, listen, I'm in a situation here. Jessica began, but Henry interrupted his daughter. My little one, listen, I can't talk right now. I'm on vacation with my family. It's not convenient to talk now, and the connection is breaking up. Let me call you back when I land. Okay, talk to you later. Love you. And the call ended. Jessica had known for a long time that her father had traded her for another family and another daughter, but to this extent, it couldn't be true. Jessica had nowhere to go now. She decided to just wander around the city. It was still daylight. And she could spend the night at the train station. The only thing was that it was January outside, and she couldn't walk around for too long. At least at night, all the centers and cafes close. She turned off her phone and started walking the frozen streets of the city. Surely, throughout the day, Jessica's smartphone had received hundreds of calls from her mother, relatives, and close friends. However, Jessica didn't want to talk to anyone right now. Night was approaching, and all the shopping centers were closing. Jessica went in twice just to warm up. Once she went into a bakery to get something to eat with her last bit of pocket money. That's how she made her way to the city train station where she planned to spend the night. Jessica had never had to spend the night in such places before, but there was nothing she could do. Sitting down on one of the free seats, Jessica looked around. She was spending the night on the edge of the city, planning to sleep at the train station. Jessica was puzzled by how this could happen to her. There were several other people around, who were probably waiting for their train or also spending the night here. Thinking about the whole situation today, Jessica began to fall asleep slowly. Suddenly she jerked when she felt a weightless touch on her bag. Jessica quickly opened her eyes and jumped up from her seat. Two men in their 20s or mid-20s, wearing hoodies, stood in front of her. She was very scared and couldn't even move. The hooligans had Jessica's bag in their hands, which had an expensive phone she had bought earlier this year. While Jessica stood in shock, the men quickly ran towards the exit. The girl looked around and realized that no one was going to help her. She had to run after the robbers herself to save her bag with the phone. She ran and didn't think about how dangerous her actions could be for her. The robbers ran out onto the street and stopped by the side wall of the train station building. Jessica slowed down and realized that there was no one around. What have I done? Now these two will kill me as a witness, she thought. The robbers, laughing, began to approach the poor girl. What's your name, beauty? If you followed us, then come with us, we'll have a good time, the bandits said vulgarly. Jessica just shook her head and was about to run away, when the robbers caught up with her and grabbed her by the arms, dragging her towards a small car. I don't want to. Let me go. Help! Jessica screamed at the top of her lungs, hoping that someone would come to her aid. The men continued to laugh. Suddenly, some men approached them from behind. They started pushing the men away from Jessica and beating them up. The girl, unable to stay conscious any longer, fell to the ground and passed out from fear. Jessica started to come to her senses. She noticed how warm and cozy she felt lying there, and she didn't want to open her eyes. But suddenly she began to remember the events of yesterday. Where am I and what happened to me? Why does my head hurt so much? Jessica thought to herself. Afraid, the girl started to open her eyes. Getting up from the bed, Jessica discovered that she was in a pristine, well-appointed room. The bed was large and covered in leather. In front of her was a huge plasma TV, and in the corner stood an apparently expensive ancient Greek sculpture. Are you awake? Asked the adult man who entered. Where am I? Who are you? Jessica asked, fearing the stranger. My name is David Jones. You can just call me David. You're in the house of my mother's employer. She works here as a housekeeper. The owners are away, so I brought you here. There's no room for you in our apartment. Jessica continued to look at David with confusion. Do you remember anything? Yesterday, at the station, two creeps were trying to put you in a car. My friend, the owner of this house, and I were passing by and wanted to help you. Can you tell me what happened to you? Jessica was silent for about a minute, trying to make sense of everything David had said. But she eventually decided to trust him, feeling that he would understand her. Jessica introduced herself and told him everything about her mother, stepfather, and escape. She never believes me, even when I told her that George doesn't work at any local bank, Jessica said sadly. You remind me a lot of my daughter, and I would like to help you, David began, but Jessica interrupted him. I don't need anyone's help, I want to leave. Where's the way out? David showed the girl where she could go out onto the street. It turned out that the house where the housekeeper and the mother of Jessica's new acquaintance worked was very large and expensive. But she didn't understand how she could bring strangers into someone else's home. Jessica wasn't planning on going back home. She called her friend Amber and invited her to meet at a cafe to ask for advice. They were able to talk calmly about everything at the cafe. Amber, being a good friend, even offered to pay for Jessica's breakfast. Jessica didn't hesitate to accept, as she was very hungry after all this time. Amber advised her friend to return home soon, but Jessica didn't plan on agreeing. The friends began to argue on this topic, but Jessica suddenly interrupted them as she saw a very familiar face. She recognized the man who had saved her from robbers yesterday. She had memorized his face well. Amber, I need to go. I'll call you later, Jessica hurried to say goodbye to her friend. She ran out onto the street and approached the man she had seen yesterday. He was already about to get into his car when Jessica ran up to him. Hello, do you remember me? I wanted to thank you for yesterday. You saved me. I couldn't thank your friend David, but I thank you, Jessica said to the man. I remember you, but David Jones is not my friend, so please don't say that. I work for him as a driver. Yesterday he asked me to take you to his house. Are you okay? The man asked. Jessica didn't answer the last question. She didn't understand why David had deceived her. The girl was already quite fed up with the fact that everyone around her was deceiving her and not trusting her. Jessica decided to express all of this to her new acquaintance's face. It just so happened that she ran into the man in the courtyard of her yesterday's savior's house. Why did you deceive me? I trusted you, she wondered. I said that I wanted to help you, but in order for you to trust me, I didn't say that this house is mine. Trust me again now, I have come up with a way to help you. The next day, David brought Jessica home. He said that he found a girl and decided to help her. Thanks to this, Olivia immediately began to trust the man. He claimed to be the head of a bank where George supposedly worked. As it turned out, there was never an George Brown who worked for him. On the same day, Olivia kicked George out of the house with his belongings onto the street. For another week, she apologized to her daughter with tears in her eyes. Jessica, in turn, accepted her mother's apologies. They love each other too much. David, one could say, became attached to Jessica as if she were his own daughter and even introduced her to his daughter Ellie, who also danced. A year later, he arranged for the girls to live together in a dance boarding school. Now the girls are studying together. And Jessica now knows that even when everything in life falls apart, there is no need to despair. You need to start thinking about what to build in the vacant space and how to fix everything.